With NSSF Managing Trustee, I had a sit down with Dr. Anthony Omerikwa, NSSF CEO, on matters social safety net. I started by asking him the foundations of the NSSF Act of 2013.
Social security under the Bill of Rights, Article 43, 1E, everyone has a right to social security. Then one of the avenues to operationalize that article in the Constitution was to come up with the NSSF Act. So the NSSF Act was a culmination of all these thought processes, and it went through a very rigorous process of public participation. Mm-hmm. Actually, a very formidable gap analysis was done. And indeed, a few things were observed, which were meant to be cured by the new act. Mm-hmm. One of which, and a very important one in this case, was to get the informal sector under the ambit of the fund. Number two, which is also very important, is to create a pool of wealth, mm-hmm, where the government can borrow or participate in order to improve the infrastructure and the macroeconomic space, yes, of the country.
And even the battles that we've been seeing, the back and forth with this issue of the Act of 2013 has been that element of public participation, which has hugely been brought up. Oh, there was no proper public participation in some of these changes, but you say that there was. So what is happening there briefly?
The subject of public participation is very subjective. And we've seen it happen in very many other jurisdictions, in very many other institutions. How do you define public participation? Should it be a census? Or do you need to identify key stakeholders so that you have this conversation? Mm-hmm. If I could take the clock back, and sparingly so, I think this act should have been called the Social Security Fund Act, the Kenya Social Security Fund Act, because this act is good for Kenya. What better way? The government has established that our propensity as Kenyans to save is very low. And this is a worldwide phenomenon. And because it is incumbent upon the government, as prescribed by the Constitution, both Article 43, 1E and Article 21, it is the role and the prerogative of the government to ensure that the populace saves, and to also create the infrastructure for that to happen. NSSF is just a vehicle for realizing that. Now, back to your question, I think, to the best where I sit, public participation took place. You can just go back and see who went to court. Mm-hmm. And NSSF is an institution of documentation. We keep records. Yes. People were engaged. And there were differences here and there which would have been solved outside the court realm, if you ask me. As a country, we've wasted 7 years, over 7 years. And you can just imagine, if the amounts had gone up, how much more money within its pool would the government have to do some of the projects that we're struggling to do, and going to take up expensive loans from outside the country.
All right. So when you went to catch that full interview in detail, that was just a portion of it. On the trading bell, 8 p.m. Wednesday, make a date.